Hello and welcome, luminous beings of light. Beth SoulFire here, and I wanted to put out this video that I did at the beginning of 2020. Laura Eisenhower interviewed me about my near-death experience, and it was the first time I'd ever spoken publicly about the whole ordeal. So I wanted to go ahead and give that a new, fresh edit, polished up, and get it out to you. So here you go. And if you haven't subscribed already yet, please subscribe. Hit the little bell so you never miss an episode, and sign up for my newsletter at www.soulfiremultiversity.com. And I will see you on the flip side. Enjoy.
Hello, everybody. It's Laura Eisenhower. I'm so excited about having this guest with me today, Beth SoulFire. We've been trying to do this for some time, and now it's finally happening. And she's got an amazing story and does amazing work. So thank you so much, Beth, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, awesome. So let me tell you a bit about Beth. And then I just have so many questions. So here we go. So Beth SoulFire is a shaman, a healing visionary, an empowerment leader, and the founder of SoulFire Alchemy. She came to know the truth of our multidimensional being and living light consciousness after a sudden severe illness and near-death experience, which completed her initiation as a shaman through SoulFire, a walk throughout all space, all time, and all dimensions, and no space, no time, and no dimension. She serves as a facilitator, a receiver, a translator, a witness, an extractor, a transmuter, a way shower, an energetic alchemist, a teacher, and a spiritual guide in the form of retreats, events, transformational healing, mentorship programs. Her signature apprenticeship program called Walking the SoulFire Journey, as well as her free live webinar series entitled From Suffering to Sovereignty. She uses every particle of her experience and training to help you heal from trauma, deeply reconnect with the natural world, reclaim your authority and sacred sovereignty, and reunite with your higher self, and ultimately oneness. Starlight Energetics is a spiritual alchemical technique gifted to her personally, straight from the celestial realm. That includes what she refers to as shamanic encoding, starlight medicine fusions of frequencies, sacred geometries, codes, symbols, and many other elements of light intelligence for recalibrating your frequency, creating new pathways with your sensorium, opening the light body, calling in light, removing, unblocking, restoring, upgrading, unlocking, and downloading new imprints for healing alchemy. Her ultimate mission is to help you cultivate divine compassion and discover and live your soul purpose. To learn more about her and her practice, you can visit soulfirealchemy.org. And, the work you do currently is, totally profound. But, your journey is just like one of those things that a movie could be made out of. So I just want to jump in with some questions, but yeah. You had a really profound near-death experience. So kind of tell us about that and what happened exactly and what you had to endure and recover from with all that.
Oh, so yeah, it's kind of overwhelming. So I want everybody listening to know that I've talked about my near-death experience a lot, but I have, and my illness, and what I've had to go through with my recovery and all the kind of, I hate to use the word crazy, but whatever word can we really use, crazy spiritual experiences that happen continually as a result. But this is the first time I'm actually telling anything about what actually happened during the near-death experience itself. So this is a first. And I was going to talk about it on my own YouTube channel. And for some reason, I just didn't end up doing it yet. And I don't know why, but, this spirit just sort of told me to wait until I did this interview with you. My family, my partner at the time, my stepdaughter, came home and found me having seizures. So I ended up having, basically, from what I understand, 4 seizures on the way to the hospital, but there could be more than that. It's been really difficult for me to go back and like recover records of everything that happened, because I went back and collected not just records from pathology reports and things that happened while I was like in the hospital for that first 3 weeks, but just all of my just regular medical records are like that thick. There are so many different diagnoses and prognoses, and I was idiopathic. They couldn't figure out really what happened to me, but I had multi-organ failure, and I was dead, you know. I had 21 IVs in me. 21. I had several different medicines just to keep my heart going, and go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, just to add to what you are, I want you to continue to share, of course, and not cut you off. But, and you'll mention how long that state of death was. I'm curious about that too.
I was in a coma for 5 days on life support for 2 weeks. And my hospitalization was longer than that, of course. But yeah, and during that time, I gained 31 or 32 liters of fluid. And I'm a tiny person. Like,
wait.
Really,
so while you were in a coma, you collected all this fluid in your body?
Yeah, collected all this fluid in my body.
Is that normal if somebody's in a coma?
No.
Okay.
I had 9 specialists standing around me that were called in from other hospitals locally that were going, what the hell happened? Pardon my French. What happened to this woman? They couldn't figure it out. And they ran every test on me. They did toxicology reports. They did everything that they could find to like figure out what caused it, and they really couldn't trace it back to anything. So, you know.
I didn't quite catch that last part. Say that again.
They couldn't really trace it. Sorry, I got to fix that accent. They couldn't really track it to anything. And
seizures, they couldn't like really diagnose it. They just, most of what they were doing was just coming up with all the possibilities, but
yeah,
no real diagnosis.
What they did know was that I had all of my organs basically shut down, except my heart. But my heart would have shut down I had every medicine in the world known to man going through me to keep my body going, in addition to being on a ventilator and intubation and all that kind of stuff. So,
have they diagnosed it yet?
No.
Did you ever get any answers?
Like, no, not really. I mean, I'm trying to figure out where do I go from here. But anyway, so just kind of, for a minute, I want to kind of just go into what happened, like in the near-death experience a little bit, because that helps me kind of show you what I had to climb out of, if that makes sense. Because, you know, it was kind of like, you know, I didn't know what happened to me. You know, for months I had health problems. And, you know, my health was just declining, and nobody really knew why, and I was stubborn, and I wouldn't go to the doctor to see about myself. I started having some problems that actually did send me to the doctor a couple of months prior to all this stuff happening. And they really couldn't figure out what was going on. I mean, it was just like a whole bunch of what we don't know, you know. And so, you know, I was just trying to treat myself holistically the way that I knew how, and it just wasn't enough. But I think the universe just had different plans. You know, it was one of those things that I was supposed to go through, because without this experience, I wouldn't be where I am now, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now.
And I do know your chart, and it's definitely something, a really powerful agreement that is blessing humanity with, you know, what you're bringing back with you. And it's very interesting how that works. So yeah, take us into, you know, the where you kind of went and how you rebuilt.
So this is just bear with me. Like I said, I'm trying not to be long-winded here, but it's kind of a journey. You know, for starters, I wanted to just say that it has taken me years to really fully understand this experience. Like, I did a lot of research trying to find out somebody who had a near-death experience like mine, and I couldn't find anything. I found some things that were similar, but nothing. So, you know, and anyway, so I digress. But anyway, going through what actually happened. You know, going back into my mind's eye when I think about it, it was kind of like being plunged into this deep ocean and drowning almost. But from what I remember from things, it was like 3 different layers of like being plunged into this deep ocean, and it was just layers within layers within layers, and going down into this really deep cavern. And it was like being pulled into this void, but I went beyond that void. And I know that's hard to imagine. And I talk about this a lot. And this is one of the reasons I haven't talked about this experience, is because human language is so insufficient to describe a spiritual experience. And it's like trying to grasp at straws, because you're grasping from nothing that exists to try to describe something that's unexplainable, right? And everything that happened to me in that place really didn't involve language, right? It's a language of the soul. It's a language of pure love and pure existence. And, you know, you talk about 0 point energy and things like that. But, you know, going through this like a swirling void, I ended up in what I can only talk about as okay, so if you can imagine what a womb might be like, none of us really know the answer to that question, really. But it was like a primordial existence is the only thing I know. It's like I was in a suspended animation. And it was darkness, but it wasn't dark. There was so much brilliance there. And everything was there. And when I say it was a space of no space, and a space of no time, but all time, a space of no dimension, because there was nothing there, but everything was there, everything.
So what would you say the vibration, like blissful, euphoric?
Yeah, like, you know, I have heard people talk about bliss consciousness. And, you know, we try to get to that place through meditation or whatever chosen path that we have to try to reach spiritual nirvana, or, you know, spiritual ecstasy is something that I use a lot. The thing is, though, it's not like I really lost my own personal expression of who I was. I did, because it wasn't just merely witnessing I am. It was being I am. And that experience is something that you can't just hand to somebody, right? I mean, I didn't even understand it myself for a long time, because I didn't really have anything to relate to it. And I had nobody to talk to about this stuff.
What was the, I bet, yeah.
Well, I pulled intubation out as I was coming out of the coma, which is, you know, kind of skipping over something which I'd probably revisit, but it was like I was coming out of this darkness and this void, and then I was coming back into this deep ocean, and it was like again, like this feeling of drowning. Well, I was on a ventilator, so it makes sense. And I had pulled this intubation out of me as I was coming out of the coma.
Wait, you pulled what the doctor put in you?
Yeah, and it damaged my vocal cords, so I couldn't speak. I had no way to talk to somebody about it if I had wanted to talk to somebody about it for a long time. Not to mention the fact that in the rural area in which I lived, and still somewhat do, I've moved since then, but you know, when you're around a lot of people who are just super religious and kind of live in fundamentalist world, you can't talk to them about this kind of thing. What do you even say? And so for a long time, I lived in my own sort of darkness, just trying to figure it all out.
And then heal your vocal cords so you could speak.
Heal everything. I mean, I had so many kinds of therapy. Like, if you could name a physical therapy at all, I had it. Speech therapy, I had, you know, occupational, physical, every kind of therapy there was, because I still couldn't walk. Like, it took me a year to recover to where I could even get back on my feet again and not be on a walker and I went from a wheelchair to a walker, and then, you know, finally driving again, and then like feeling like I was even back and being a human being again. I was completely dehumanized. I was like dewomanized. It was horrible. I lost all
yourself to be human again. Yeah.
And I had my career taken away from me, right? So I had a massage school that I had students enrolled when this happened. And bam, everything was just taken away from me. And, I came back into this world trying to decipher between realities, right? Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Because when you come from something like that and you come back, and I'm back in this body, and I'm not, first of all, I was angry because I didn't want to be back here. I wanted to go back there and be in that bliss consciousness and be oneness, right? Be it.
Do you remember making a choice about coming back?
Come back? That's the other element of it, is that as I was being pulled back from this place through that void, there was like this collective there. And it wasn't a conversation like you and I are talking. It was just a visual, and it wasn't even a visual communication or telepathic. I don't know how to explain it because, again, I don't have words. But they showed me what my soul purpose was, my soul's purpose, why I made a decision to even come here. And through this vision, I, saw everything about my life, but I also saw future things about my life. And there was a choice in that. But I saw the result of the choices that I could make. So in a way, it was kind of like I felt like I wasn't left with a choice because I couldn't make the other choice. Like, does that make sense?
So does this remind you of maybe when we actually do leave the physical and our physical body, like we don't have the opportunity to come back in, that we're almost choosing our next life? Do you feel like you were just having a rebirth while being able to maintain the same body in the same way somebody might experience and then take a new body?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, my birth name is Beth Ward. And when I died, it's almost like Beth Ward died. SoulFire is what was born. And they showed me what that meant and what that was going to mean and what I had to do or what I should do there wasn't really no should or had to. It was just kind of like, this is what you agreed to.
Right. So that was kind of the choice, is seeing that, I guess, timeline or that reality, and maybe you just felt pulled into that flow. And
right. And they showed me the different timelines. I could see all of them. But it's like, are you going to make the highest choice? And this is part of what I do for a living. And so, like, when you're working with me, my whole purpose is to help you figure out what your highest destiny line is, right? We all want to be living on that higher timeline. We all want to be living the highest octave of everything, our astrology, our numerology, our everything of who we are, all of the things that we've been through, all of our traumas. We want to harvest the gold and the diamonds out of that, right? And apply it to ourselves, and it becomes this robe of royalty in a way that we get to wear and walk through this life with. It's a sense of pride, but not in a way that society has labeled pride, if you know what I mean.
Right, with the ego, like, follow me and
there's the highest octave of the ego too, right? So,
right. So you felt the ego, like, being able to stand in alignment with the multidimensional.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it was kind of like, well, to me, it was not, the choice was already made, right? But it didn't change the fact that when I came back into this body, I was angry. I was dealing with all this I didn't understand. I couldn't make sense of it in my brain because my brain hadn't caught up to the higher self aspect. It has taken me to just get to where I am now 7 years, and I still make, we're all on that progress line. We're all on that self-development. You know what? We'll be there until the day we die. We're always going to be evolving.
Wait, say that. Just back up a little bit. It was a little bit, the sound wasn't the best. So I just don't want anybody to miss a beat of what you're saying.
I was just saying that, I'm still on that line of spiritual evolution. We all will be until the day that we die and beyond. I mean, until we go back to that oneness, and then we start a cycle over again if we decide to, I suppose. but in saying that, it's like I'm still discovering new things about what it means, what it meant, new epiphanies, new aha moments. Just yesterday, well, we all do this, right? So it's not that it makes me special. Everybody has this soul journey they're going on. It just so happens that at the time it was not a gift to me. It was a curse to me. And I was, shaking my fist at the heavens like, why me?
You mean like, why me? Why am I back in the physical?
Yeah. Why is this happening to me? Why am I, why?
You felt more drawn to staying in the other side, but you knew the choice had been made. You knew the choice had been made, but you preferred, yeah.
I didn't waste any time though, because I wanted to get right back on the path to like wellness, right? Physical wellness was my most priority, but I also knew that I had all this spiritual work that had to be done, all of the spiritual evolution that I had this heavy weight on my back. It's like, okay, here you go. You got your work cut out for you. Good luck. And so I'll start taking, if you imagine that mountain that we got to go hiking up, I'm packing all this heavy gear, and I got to figure out how to unpack this. How do I heal from this?
Without really you had nobody really to talk to. I mean, I
literally couldn't talk, for a long time. And even when I could, I had already I was so hard, Laura, running away from what happened. That first 2 or 3 years after it happened, I was just trying to run to the finish line of being better, like walking again and being back to working. And, I couldn't be a massage therapist anymore. I had been a massage therapist for 12, 13 years. And I was having to redefine everything about myself. And this collective that I was telling you about, they did not let me forget. Oh, they haunted my dreams. And it was like I was being chased, and
did they feel like a council that you were a part of previously?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I didn't know. At the time, it was kind of like, I knew when I was there, but when I got back here and I'm having to deal with the mundane and deal with healing and trying to figure out how I rebuild my body. And I got a hold of, I know you know Bruce Lipton.
Yes.
Yes, the belief of biology, or whatever his book is. I started doing all kinds of research about that, and I had Reiki as a massage therapist, so I didn't know energy healing, and I started just channeling all this healing into my own organs, and especially my liver and my kidneys, because they were the most hard hit. And just trying to heal.
I mean, you had literally you were rebuilding organs that had shut down that were basically on a support, and it wasn't just lung or breathing support; it was all your organs. Your heart, you said, was okay, but not. I mean, it must have been overwhelmed, to keep your body alive.
I was in end-stage liver disease. I was on a liver.
Did they consider it cirrhosis, or what term?
Yeah, that's one of the things that they diagnosed me with. They diagnosed me with cirrhosis. They diagnosed me with.
That wasn't because of alcohol in your life. I mean, that was just the seizure somehow began to really compromise your organs.
Yeah. Well, see, we don't know. I had they diagnosed me with COPD. My guess is where they left me on the ventilator for too long.
So that's a pulmonary thing. Yeah.
Pulmonary thing. I had kidney failure. So, I never was on a kidney replacement list or anything like that, but literally.
You figured out how to rebuild organs that people are usually getting transplants for.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that in a little bit, but keep going.
No, by the time it was time for me to, for them to say, okay, well, you could have a liver transplant, but you don't need one now. We don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it.
Was it herbs? Was it the energetic, or was it both? Or
I'm an avid researcher, holistic person. You don't know the ends of the earth that I researched to try to find supplementation that would help me, rebuild whatever it was that I researched, that I figured out on my own. That was my problem. they had me on, I don't know, man, I could probably ask Brent, but probably like 37 different prescription medications. I mean, when I got out of the hospital, there were so many of them that they told me that if I didn't take them, that I would be dead. Like you have to take this or you're gonna die. I purposefully took myself off of those medications without them knowing about it because I knew that it was going to kill me. If I followed,
so you felt the medications in the long run were going to kill you.
I knew that they were. They were killing me. And I was like, well, if this didn't kill me, they're trying. I mean, even when I was in the hospital, I was convinced they were trying to kill me, which, people can say, well, you're delusional and all this stuff. Well, whatever.
Whoa. Right. You had to literally be this unbelievable warrior. And I love the SoulFire that you your name now. And, man, I'm just blown away. So keep going.
I don't know. It's just.
Okay. So my question.
I don't remember all that, but yeah, go ahead.
You had to kind of be your own doctor, coming from a more holistic place, connect to your own energy and the, did you call them council collective?
Oh, yeah.
And their guidance, right, as a part of your higher self collective.
Well, the funny thing about that is that when I was little, and I always tell this story because it's just part of who I am, I was always connected to the natural world, especially when I was a kid. I lived down in the woods. Like, I grew up in the mountains, in Blue Ridge Mountains, and I lived in the woods. I was friends with the fae. I mean, the trees, the rocks, the stones, the creek, everything. They were like my family.
That was a comfortable thing to just feel like trusting of, yeah.
Right. And I looked up, and for some reason, Pleiades was always my obsession. And of course, I tried to tell my dad about it one time. He's like, here's my weird kid talking about being from the stars. I was like, that's home, Daddy. But I just, we get away from that though, right? Because it gets knocked out of our head, right? By the time we're like a teenager, it's like we're taught to forget all that or we're punished out of it. And sometimes,
oh my gosh, it's horrible. Oh, yes.
But I found my way back through this path of shamanism, and I actually went. We have something here in the South called a Coptic Conference, and it's something that I had been to years prior. And I went, when I got back on my feet and I was able to kind of get out and go, it just came up that we were having it. And there was a lady that did shamanism. She was doing healing sessions there. And her name was Dr. Rachel Mann. And I thought, ooh, that's so interesting. I have to go have a healing session with her. And you got to remember, I said I was kind of running away from stuff. Well, when I went to see her for that healing, it brought something forth from that near-death experience that I had been busy trying to shut out. And she handed me a piece of paper and said, well, I teach classes. If you're ever interested, look me up. And I was like, okay, sure. And so I took it home, didn't think anything about it. Laura, I might as well have had 10,000 copies of that paper because everywhere that I looked, there it would be. And I would see it and I would ignore it. And I'm like, I can't do that. I don't have the money for that. I can't travel for that.
Oh wait, just so everybody heard that. You basically were kind of blowing it off. It kept appearing and you said, I don't have time for that. Or what was the expression you said? You don't have time for that, or it just doesn't feel like maybe.
Oh, I just was making excuses. Like, right. I don't have the money for that.
Money for that. Yeah.
I can't go travel that far. When you live in Northeast Tennessee, there ain't a whole lot of shamans, if you know what I'm saying. And this lady lived up in she was in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is a pretty far drive. But anyway, it's like
that was just a synchronicity that you met her, right?
Yeah, totally. And then, but it wasn't. I mean, it was a synchronicity, but was not an accident. She was placed in my path, and they were not letting me forget that. And my grandmother started coming through me, and she was the one that was like. She was the one that kind of got me on the path too to ancestral healing. And
so your grandmother that had passed was coming through and helped you to get on the path of what?
Yeah, my mother's mother.
Yes, and got you on the path of what kind of healing? I couldn't quite hear that.
Ancestral,
clearing and healing.
Like, I just kind of came into that after.
You were just kind of like connecting with her on that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, she came in and started connecting with me. And she had this little thing I always do that she was doing where she just kind of hit me on the back of the head. Not physically, but, a spiritual tap. You know what I mean? And she was like, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. And then the collective would come in with her.
Then who would come in with her?
The collective would come
The
in
collective.
with her.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you feel like she was a part of the collective was she a very familiar grandmother to you on a spiritual level when she was alive?
On a spiritual level, yeah, totally. Like genetically speaking, I feel like that's where I kind of got my spiritual DNA from. I don't know if that makes some sense. Like,
it does.
It was super spiritual, super good, like very gentle, very compassionate.
There's some sort of agreement for this collective to come into this family line. And then clear the ancestral patterns, and because that really has a reverberation. I mean, that ripples out. If there's anything that ripples out, is working family line energy, to the whole world.
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, I ended up finally I gave in and called, and miracles happened, right? So it's like these mountains just got moved out of my way for me. All the excuses I thought that I was making didn't exist.
So at this time, though, let me just ask real quick, what was your physical body doing? Like, were you shifting from the medication at that time to the holistic approach? Or were you like much better at that time?
This was 3 years after the near-death experience and the illness. So I had recovered to the point where I was doing pretty good physically. Like, I mean, while I was running away from my calling, I was not running away from healing. Like, I had been really busy, like I said, doing holistic stuff to heal, doing energy healing on myself, just stuff like that, and a lot of just communication with spirit was taking place, even though I didn't really even understand what it meant.
Well, in the beginning, you mentioned rebuilding. Is that part of that when you said climbing your way out? So that was... Did you feel like that was also in the, when you were not here and you were in the, you were on the other side, and then it followed you into the recovery on the physical? Does it include both, that whole, that rebuilding process? I mean, obviously when you're in the after zone, it's more going to be physical, but you mentioned something about climbing your way out. Part of that choice and being that bridge and then coming back into the physical.
It was kind of just coming to terms with it, right? Because it's kind of like being told, well, you have this big responsibility, and even when I was having, when I was in near-death experience and the collective was showing me these things and these timelines, I was like, I kind of had this response that was like, who do you think I am? I'm too big. This is too big for me. Like, that's part of that running away. It's like, I can't, or something,
Like your ego couldn't process it. But then at the same time, you were in this whole other level of identity that you are now embodying to the full.
And it didn't help that I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. So when I finally went to see the shaman for the healing session, it brought something forth from that just like, it clicked, right? So it helped me kind of have this realization, okay, I get it now. I know what I have to do. And so ever since then, I've had teachers placed in my path, just in that same way. I've had several teachers. I even have people I'm working with right now, like Paul Butler, Prime Disclosure is one of them, and he teaches Taoism and shamanism and lots of different paths. But I'm just sort of working with him on a couple of projects and learning from him. And I mean, I'm always going to be on that path of learning. I'll be doing that to the day I die. But yeah, I just was coming to terms with what it meant to do what I was supposed to be doing. And through this path of going through the energy medicine program that I went through, helped me to really, I don't know if you can see it over here, but this is my mesa. I'm a mesa carrier. So
I'm sorry, that didn't come in very clear. That's your...
my mesa. I'm a mesa carrier, which is a medicine journal.
Oh.
I know you got to be familiar with it. It's a Andean spirituality. It's a Peruvian spirituality. So that was primarily what Rachel taught, and we went through each of the lodges of her. It's like you're going into the South and dealing with your original wounds, and then going to the West and learning how to die to all the things that don't serve you anymore, and learning your integrity and your power. And once again, going back to South, learning how to trust your connection with the earth, and have a relationship with everything because we're part of nature. We're not separate from nature. That whole lie of
I
illusion.
know.
And then going into the north, it's like the grandmothers and the grandfathers and that ancestral healing and knowing that they were these warriors and they carried baskets filled with peace now. So it's up to us to kind of understand how to walk through life with that peace and that wisdom. And they can help us do that. We got to know how to reach out, right? And have that, live in gratitude and embrace that. And then you go into the East where you're learning about how to, the eagle and the condor, right? So in the hawk medicine, and it's learning how to, walk on this earth with compassion and with love for yourself, right? So that's part of like my path of learning, all about having to step into my own authority. My whole life, I've been one of those people that it's not just because I was taught to be that way, but just our programming in society, shut up, do what you're supposed to do, be polite, don't ever speak out, don't speak your truth at all costs.
Yeah, and if something's wrong, give your power to a doctor in a medical industry that is not empowering the authenticity of our own ability.
Absolutely. So, yeah. That's been this journey that I've been on, is self-empowerment, and it's helped me to reconnect, because once we're living from that place of being able to do for ourselves, right? So if we're up against a decision about anything and we ask, what would somebody who loved themselves do? If I love myself, what decision will I make here? That is going to be the ultimate truth. It's going to be out of ultimate love. And it's always going to serve not just ourselves, but the collective. We're not doing it from a place of narcissism. We're not doing it from a place of selfishness. Like, I think society's really messed up our whole idea about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest ailment we all have is society. And then everybody else we're diagnosed, or people are diagnosed with all these disorders, but it's society that is the root of it. It's crazy. Exactly.
We're not empowered. We're not empowered at all to know how to deal with our own trauma at all, how to, go into the darkness and sit with our own hurt and acknowledge that child that was hurt or abandoned or abused or orphaned or whatever. And we're orphaned by life. And it's just a matter of having such high compassion for yourself that you can go back to that place or that space whenever it happened. Give yourself that love that you need, that you never got, because nobody's going to really come to our rescue for us on that.
Oh, yeah. And that's the underworld, the crone, finding that light of one's own internal wisdom to light the way through the darkness, through different kind of darkness than what you experienced, which was more the womb, but the darkness of having to do that shadow work and finding that wisdom, which your teachings and what you share really help connect a person to that. And it's the scariest initiation for people. And it's so incredible to have guides like you, right? I mean, major. So when you talk about the collective, you were saying before, you mostly connect them to the Pleiadians, or is it sort of no real association?
Over the years, I have come to new understandings about who they are. And it's funny because I've had some friends ask me before, like, do you work with ascended masters? And, when I first encountered that question, I was kind of like, not really. But it's hard for me to know always how to answer questions like that, because it's never ever my intention. In fact, I'm always a little worried that I don't want to sound like I'm being like full of myself or full of it or whatever. But I feel like when I see that vision of the collective, it's kind of like I'm in the center and I have a vortex around my head, and they just sort of float whatever it is that I need into the vortex. Like, does that make sense? So it's like I work with a collective of, I don't even refer to them as anything, really. The only reason I say collective is because people need a label.
Yeah, I love that there is not really a label. And I kind of had this feeling, even, there might have been things that you related to as a child, but that there is no real label, Mm-hmm. It's just in that unified, it seems like it's just really in that, well, one could call it founder races, guardians, 0-point
Right.
source beings. I mean,
I think we human beings,
labels can get in the way. Anyway, keep
they
going.
do. They do. I feel like we human beings, in my last video, I was just talking about this very thing, that it feels like we have to have a label for everything. It's just the way our brain works, and it's the way we've been taught to do.
Yeah, I don't resonate with that. So this is so cool. Yeah. I mean, it's not that I completely am repelled by it either, but it's like,
I know.
right.
It's kind of like the language barrier.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like, here's a perfect example. The near-death experience that I had, just by speaking to it, almost makes it profane. But
Right,
it's so
kind of bring
sacred.
words to it. It's so sacred, and there's no, and I can understand
It's
how
unnameable and unknowable for a reason.
Yeah, yeah. And
It's
that's
a
what's
great
so
mystery.
crazy about religion, because it wants to define everything, and there's dogma, and it really, there's no real spiritual freedom, and really understanding that our own life experience is the way to show us what it's really about. And your journey is just one of these just unbelievable things. So, not to completely shift gears, but I want to make sure you complete any thoughts before I do, because I have definitely a question that's coming through, like, ooh.
As far as I know, that's, as far as the near-death experience, that's pretty much it. If something else comes up, it'll come up. So.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
Okay. So here's my question.
Yeah.
What were the doctors saying when you came out? Were they saying this is, we didn't expect to see this? This is, and was your family, like, was everybody so dumbfounded that you actually came back? Did you get a sense that everybody, I mean, family and the medical team, that you were not going to make it? I mean, was it just sort of like, what? Was it a sort of a shock because maybe your stats or what they were noticing was not somebody who was ready to emerge from a coma?
They said that I had less than a 20% chance of living 2 years if I didn't get a liver transplant. And I never had one.
Wow. So I know people are probably like, what's the secret? How do we,
Well, I will say this too.
And this is why people should get in touch with your teachings and all that you offer, because it's not just that, it's a multidimensional thing, and understanding the energy behind, how that impacts our organs. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say there wasn't a night, especially that first, maybe not an entire year, but after I got out of the hospital, there wasn't a night that went by, especially for that first probably 8 months, that I wasn't terrified that I wouldn't wake up.
Wait. So in the recovery, you were basically never feeling the security or reassurance that you were going to be able to continue to thrive.
They had a horrible prognosis for me. They had no confidence at all that I had.
And now, are they kind of looking at you and where you are today, just kind of like, this is like, how in the world? Are they curious, or are they sort of afraid? Like, because it challenges the system and their belief systems. And
I have to be honest, I haven't even been to the doctor back to, like, I've got a doctor that I go and see for certain refills on stuff that I have to have. But as far as like follow up for any of my specialists, I haven't even been in like a year and a half, because I just got tired of their BS. And that sounds kind of trite. And it's like,
no.
Who do you think that you are? Because just, discredit the whole. Well, I've had to go through the mill with them. It's like they would see this miracle before their eyes, but they didn't like. I was not a likable patient, because I become so in tune with my own body that I could tell them when my platelets were low.
They didn't like the fact that you were empowered and in tune.
Oh, did you have a test? Did
Terrible.
you have a blood test to show her that? And I was like, no, I'm telling you that they're low. Oh, we need to run a test for that. I mean, they were just so mean to me about everything.
Oh God.
And I was just like, you know what? I don't need that. I mean, I know enough to know if there is something off with me, I know. Like, I'm going to go to get it checked out if I need to, but.
Right. And I mean, that level of, that's an education that is something that nobody will ever get in any sort of educational system. And to be able to remind people of our innate ability to regenerate and heal is like one of the greatest gifts I can think of. especially in a world that's like in hysteria over coronavirus, which I'd love to just talk to you about in just a little bit. But when you talk about reception of starlight energetics, can you help us understand what you mean by that?
Yeah. Okay. So back in the summer, we talk about my natal chart a little bit, and like I've got all this stuff falling in my first house, which is it's forcing me to really, anything that I haven't dealt with is kind of forcing me to like shed it. Right?
Wait, you're saying anything that what? Anything that doesn't serve you?
I have not dealt with or
dealt with, right?
That I'm supposed to be doing.
All the transits of Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, right over your first house, right up to your ascendant. Oh yeah, no, and Mars.
You're going to shed it, and you're going to shed it now. So
yeah, that's immediate. Yeah.
A friend of mine had invited me to it's not really yet a retreat center, but it will be. It's a property that was left.
Wait. Yeah. If you could rewind, you said a retreat center that you're creating or that exists. That what
it will exist in the future. It doesn't yet. Okay. But it's just a property that a friend of mine has, and so I went up there on an invitation just to go. And I, for whatever reason, we all have reasons why we say no to things. We have, and we let things impede us, a reason why we can't go. And my higher self was just kind of like, look, you have to go do this. Stop putting it off. And so whatever things were standing in my way, which I don't really talk about, but I finally was just like, okay, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go do it. It was on that trip, and my friend does reconnective healing. He does the reconnection. And he did that reconnection for me. And I can't really speak to that too much because I don't know a lot about it, but anybody who's interested can probably just look it up. It's called the reconnection.
So is this the most recent sort of healing modality you've worked with? Or?
Well, I didn't really work with it. He just did he wanted to do the reconnection for me. And he was experimenting with just his own stuff because he does his own version of what he calls light medicine too. And so anyway, I went up there and something happened to me because I ended up having it was almost like a time travel moment where because we spent the whole time outdoors all weekend long on this beautiful property in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And it was like right on the Appalachian chain. And I
used to live in that area. So for a lot. Yep. Well, that's another conversation, not an interview, but anyway, keep going.
So it's like right up on what I would consider a nodal access point. And the Appalachian grid has a lot of, grids that are being activated. And they have been really talking to me and working with me to help with these activations. And I've been placed in Knoxville from where I was at because this is another activate. They just need me here, basically. But anyway, so I was up there and there was this big rock pile. There's so many odd things about the property, about the way the energy runs through it, the way that the trees, there's so many, I call them yod trees. They started talking to me. I know this sounds insane, but your viewers will totally get it.
I know, that's actually like my version of normal. It's like,
okay, yeah, right? We're talking to normal language here, you and I. So the trees, they started talking to me. I've been able to see energy for many years, but it's become very fine-tuned to me. So I can see the particles of both light and dark energy. And that really turned up that weekend for me. And I was able to hear the voices of the mountains. And they started talking to me. And they were like showing me these grids, like literal grids of energy and information, frequencies, codes. And they were showing me like how they were channeling energy. The mountains, like the mountain range was that place where I was at was harnessing this energy and dispersing it, not just through the property itself, but the trees. And the trees were acting like there were yod trees that have like three, I don't know how to explain it. It's just
three growths, like trunks.
Yeah. Yes. And then they were like tuning fork trees. And just, there were all these trees had their own kind of job, right? Job's not really.
Oh my gosh. Goosebumps. Keep going. Yeah.
And then but they worked with the ground and the earth and you could see the ripple waves and literal ripple waves in this ground, and it's sacred ground. And I started seeing all this stuff that used to happen like in a different timeline on the property or in the past on the property. I started seeing things in the future on the property. And I was like, it was just all these communications I was receiving. Okay, then this is where Starlight Energetics came in for me. I started having, when I was working with Jeff, my friend Jeff, he was doing this reconnection. I started seeing geometric patterns. And in these patterns, there would sometimes be symbols, but there were always these harmonic frequencies, like I could hear sound in them. And it could be a myriad of different things. So sometimes there would be even textures, and it sounds nuts, but taste, like I could taste
no, it doesn't, because the elementals we hold in our soul.
Yes.
But and I don't want to break your thought, but did you also feel distortions and where there was any infiltration when you were tuning in?
Totally, like even in the land. So he and I were going around the property and doing healing on the trees, because they were like showing us where there was like things that are blocked, and that they needed us to kind of help move the energy and shift things around.
Yeah, and you've done that with your own physical body, like it's like nature. Yeah. Keep going.
And they were showing me how to do this. They were teaching me and showing me what to do to help them, but at the same time, they were showing me how to do this with a human being.
So it's kind of like this co-creation of medicine. I mean, it's like it's medicine, but it's such a reflection of our own process right now as a humanity. I mean, it's
right.
Major. Oh gosh. So
I call it light medicine, because it's
what do you call it?
Explain it, right?
What did you call it though?
Light medicine.
Nice.
And starlight energetics too, because so then it's like every star is like the sun, right? We're made of that stardust. All of that exists. Every particle in existence is us. And energy flows, and it flows with abundance, and it flows freely. The only time there are distortions is when there's a clog, when there's it's stuck, right? And it needs to be unlocked or unblocked. And it can happen within us, and it happens on the earth and these grids like that you speak to, and we know certain forces take that and use it for their own
right
agenda.
Like what I love is when you mention like harvesting these traumas into like goal, like I can't remember how you put it, and then there are those that are sort of the robbers that are trying to siphon and steal, right? And so you're creating these corrections, and you've mastered. I mean, I don't want to, make you uncomfortable, but I mean,
you're fine.
You are like mastering things that are so beyond most people's comprehension. And it's funny because it sounds crazy, but it's like, no, this is where it's at. This is what being tuned in is all about.
Well, and it's amazing. It never ceases to amaze me. And I live in such gratitude and awe about it, because, there's a part of my own ego that's like, what makes me so special? But we all have this potential. Every single one of us. This is what we're made for. We are luminous beings.
Right. Like we're all, I mean, the thing is like every single person is special. They might not have awoken to it yet. And so the ones that have awoken to it are the activators, and they send these transmissions, and they work. I mean, it's just, and that's what you give.
Yeah.
But the old paradigm model of being in such a position hasn't had these kind of experiences that blow everything open and create that reconnect, where you're touching something that has been blocked off from us and manipulated away from us. It's like you're returning people to themselves.
Exactly. And it's these
people ascend. I mean,
these breakdowns that people have, the meltdowns, right? The breakdowns. Even I still have breakdowns, but that's where the breakdowns.
But that's all part of the initiations, and you're holding. You recognize that these initiations are sacred. They shouldn't be misunderstood and handed over to, the matrix way of handling it, which steals and disconnects us. And you went through that big time, and you just were the unbelievable warrior in the face of that.
Thank you. Well, and it's called soul loss for a reason. That's one of the things that we, as a shaman, we work with is soul retrieval. That's what we're doing, is retrieving those fragmented parts of ourselves. Because when we undergo a trauma, part of our soul does leave. It checks out to protect itself, or sometimes it actually does get, like you said, stolen away from us. And so that's the shaman's job, is to go searching for this soul part and bring it back to you. And along with it always comes allies, elementals, animal allies, spirit guides. They want to be with you on this journey.
Oh gosh, this is
so. They want to help you.
Wait, what was that last part?
I said they want to be with you on this journey and they want to help you. That's what they're here to do.
Yes.
They're not here to live your life for you and give you all the answers, but they're here to open your eyes to the synchronicity. But you have to have those eyes to see and those ears to hear. If this is open and you're aware, you're consciously aware, and you're always on the lookout, you're always going to get this support because it's there in abundance.
Oh gosh, I swear to gosh, this is just so awesome. So when you look at and I know this is a big jump, and I hope you can handle the spontaneity of some of my questions, but when you look at Greys or EBEs or some of these abduction scenarios and the whole realm of extraterrestrials, government treaties, and this whole aspect that we're facing with disclosure and just uncovering a lot of secrets and coming to terms with what has been kept from us, where do you feel like these beings just followed some matrix program, or they got sort of that trauma? There's a lot of trauma-based mind control that is where that stealing can happen to begin to digress a being, even if their intellect is what are your thoughts on the whole extraterrestrial thing?
So the thing is, there are a lot of different beings.
Right. I was just going to say, I kind of starting with the Greys, but I mean, yes, there's the diversity is huge. So I'm only limiting it to that just based on what we were talking about. But yeah, take it away wherever you want to go with that.
So for me, okay, I'm just not going to worry about that. I'm worried. I always worry, what if I say things people don't understand? So I have kind of come to understand how to offer a being anywhere in the universe a transmutation. I can open up a portal through my own heart, because we all can do that, and offer them a doorway straight out of suffering or out of slavery or out of they've given their own power and their own authority away. A lot of them, they're just living an enslaved life like the rest of us. And so we have that power. And human beings have been lied to. We're made to believe that we are not powerful, that we don't have any authority, but that's wrong. We have ultimate authority, not just over ourselves, but if we want to offer a love and light to a being, they can take that, but they've got a choice, because to me, the way I see it, it's a free will universe. They've got a choice to make, just like human beings do. And they can make a choice that, no, they like that power and they want to scurry back to whatever it is they're working for or whatever they're in service to or whatever the agenda that they're serving, or they can make a choice to set themselves free. We have the power to offer them that if we're standing in our authority. So I don't know if that helps speak to that.
Yes. No. I mean, that's it. We never lose the free will, and the power of the regenerative abilities that we have to restore, to reconnect in order to rebuild is something that you understand more than most. And so even the most digressed species, maybe they got the big intellect and they got the technologies, but they've lost the reproductive capacities and they need to gain genetic material either to serve the dark side or learn how to connect with the soul again. Absolutely is a choice, moment to moment. Yeah. So when you see the coronavirus and everybody freaking out with somebody that is just not regurgitating from a book some healing thing that you learned, but has lived it on a level that most haven't, venturing in places that some aren't ever going to be willing to go, even though, we've all experienced the reincarnation cycles. I mean, in these times that we're in, what can you say to people to just, I don't know, as you tune into the bigger picture and what I guess the most fear-based person is thinking right now, what would you say to those kind of situations and people?
I would say that because you are more powerful than you know, everything that you think is true. So if you think that this virus is going to come and overtake you and you are so frightened that it's going to happen, there's an element of manifestation in that. I
Yeah.
also know, because I know, now I can't, know for somebody else, but I know for me that okay, I'll give you an example. And this speaks to the coronavirus because I myself have been caught in this like little bit where I've worried about it. But I have to remind myself what I've overcome. The other night I started getting sniffles, and all the telltale signs you start getting when you're getting sick. And I was all worried, not that it was coronavirus or anything, I was just worried because I've got a compromised immune system, right? And so I was thinking, oh God, come down with a cold, what am I going to do? And my higher self sort of comes down to speak to me. And she kind of scares me sometimes because she's a badass. She's like, you know what to do. Just do it. And so I was like, okay. So I close my eyes and I become like, have you ever heard of, the whirling dervishes, right?
Yeah.
These spinning, like, okay, so I become the thing that I am.
Incredible. Yeah, spinning. I used to spin like in my childhood, and then when I go to concerts, it's like I just spin. Anyway, keep going.
Remember what you did when you were a child. That innocence, that playfulness, and that freedom and that joy. There was so much intelligence in that. And so to go back into that portal and to remember how you played and you weren't afraid of anything, you can go back into that. There is a gateway there. But that's what I did. So I started spinning and visualize myself as this light being that I am and you are and we are. And it just turned to dust. Everything about a virus in my body that could potentially be, or a bacteria, just turned to dust. I woke up the next morning and I was completely symptom free. I haven't had any symptoms since then.
And so to rebuild organs, like you have, and to be able to do that in the moment that something is starting to cause you fear is like an immediate response, because knee-jerk reactions and triggers reinforce PTSD and trauma, and your knee-jerk reaction was pure medicine pretty immediately, and then you woke up feeling better. So yeah, keep going.
I want to say to everybody that heard what you just said, you can do that. It just requires commitment. That's it. You just got to make up your mind that that is what is important to you. That is what
you tune into that frequency.
Right. Healing is important to you. And the more healing that you do, the more trauma that you go through, the more you go and harvest that gold and that diamond out of the trauma and the hurt and whatever you've had to endure in your life. And the more that you do that, the faster you move through things. The more you practice being consciously aware, the quicker you can get there. And that reactionary response to any fear that comes up, your initial fear is going to be there. It's like you said, it's a knee-jerk response. Immediately, you're going to have a fear come up, or that, like you said, that PTSD be triggered. You're going to have it immediately. But the more that you work on this stuff, the faster that higher self comes in and is able to go, wait a minute, you know what to do. You know how to transcend this.
Oh my God.
Do what you know how to do, right? I know it sounds simple. I know. And we want to make everything so complex. And if I tell people the quickest path to enlightenment is self-love, they like, okay, well, how do I do that? And then, you give them some very simple exercises, and then they still want to make it so complex, and they throw things out so quick because the simplest answer can't possibly be it, right?
Right. And then so much is trying to distort our relationship with the simplicity by overly complicating it. And it's part of where the new age deceptions come in, which are not very empowering all the time. Yeah. So you've been able to recognize the difference between synchronicities that are not accidents, things that have shown themselves to you without turning a blind eye, even if you wanted to. So what do you think? I mean, not everybody's going to go through the experience you did to be this aware and multidimensionally grounded in a physical plane where there's no veils for you, right? Are the kind of events that you're doing and the courses that you do, let's talk about that because I know we got to close. Yeah. Does it help with that kind of stuff? Like, what would be the main focus that you present to people? Because my intuition just said this is what she does. I mean, you could even just have a casual conversation with somebody and you send those codes, right? So even if I mean, I don't know how the themes are presented, but tell us about the events you're doing and like what you're offering here.
So I work with people through transformational healing programs. So everybody that comes to see me to work with me, I do the Starlight Alchemy sessions, and you can go to my website to learn more about that. Because there's different levels. So, there's different levels depending on what you think you need, and we can do a consultation call to find out like what would be most suitable for you. But I work with you through the Starlight Alchemy sessions. I work with you to kind of help retrieve those lost soul parts, to work with you to help you understand your trauma, how to figure out how to heal from it, how to like integrate that part of yourself that was lost or that was hurt, how to love yourself, how to really go into self-love, how to take the tools that come to you as a gift from the spirit world to apply them to your everyday life so that it becomes anchored, right? Because it has to be anchored into this 3D reality. We can go and get healing sessions a lot, but if we don't know how to anchor it into this reality, into our body, into our everyday life.
Has to be a way of life, yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of how I work with people through the transformational healing packages that I do. The other thing that I do is I do retreats, and I also speak. So that's, something I'm doing more of is trying to go around and speak and teach. I have a Crowning Glory, Reclaiming Your Sovereign Self retreat coming up in June. My partner, Deborah Macking, and I were having to kind of do a little bit of a rearrangement on where the location that's going to be, but it's probably going to be up here somewhere, either in the Blue Ridge or the Smokies, which is where I'm at. So that's in June, and you can find that information on my website. And I'm here locally in Knoxville. I'm doing a near-death experience symposium on March 28th, and we're going to just be talking all about like out-of-body experiences, astral experiences, near-death. So that's local here in Knoxville on March 28th. And then I'm getting ready. I've got an actual group on Facebook, and it's called Awaken Your SoulFire.
You said a group?
Mm-hmm. It's a group. It's called Awaken Your
SoulFire. So people, is it a private group?
It's a private group.
Okay, so people, and you accept and approve when people,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There'll be some questions on there, and if you don't get it, just the reason I created the group is for this. I am launching a new program that's free, completely free, and it's called From Suffering to Sovereignty. And it's going to be a live webinar. So you're going to get to interact with me live every single day. I'm going to be launching it the first week in June. And it's going to be kind of like a step-by-step process to get you on that path, right? And so there'll be all kinds of tools there for you to help you. I'm going to be trying to go live in there every week to interact with people. So I really want to encourage people to join that, because I try to put out free information. I've got my YouTube channel. It's called Beth SoulFire Alchemy. So if you go and look that up, I try to do a video once a week on there, and I just talk about all this stuff. I talk about, sometimes I'll choose a specific topic to speak to, and sometimes I just turn on the camera and I just let it go, because whatever's going on spiritually, I just got to share it with you guys,
Yeah.
Because, it's like you said, there's light codes and frequencies in our own voice when we're talking about divine things that happen to us in our own experience.
Yeah. I mean, I just keep getting this vision of how you tune people's instrument to create a harmonic resonance with the organic process of upgrading DNA, being able to generate and heal, and being able to notice the things that support that in our lives. And your life journey has, I mean, I don't even know how to close the show, because I'm just like, I could talk to you for so long, and I'm amazed. I knew this was going to be incredible. And it's so funny that it happened after Mercury went direct.
I know. We
time of a full moon in Virgo. What's that?
I said we tried to do this 4 times. And see, my moon is in Virgo, and we just had this full moon in Virgo, and I've had these incredible, just spiritual experiences last couple of days of just freedom has been my anthem. It's like I'm just untethering myself from pretty much everything that's keeping me back.
It's huge. Yeah, and I won't go into what I know about your chart, but you're here to liberate the human race in ways that the more everybody gets to know her, the more they'll understand, and the more they'll be able to apply it to themselves. And yeah, what's incredible is the polarity integration of Virgo, which is an earth sign ruled by Mercury, and what's opposite, which is Pisces Neptune, which is, you know, we had a recent sun conjunct Neptune with the full moon. And, you know, when we integrate those polarities, we recognize a much, much larger picture, and the veils begin to lift, and we're walking on the earth with our branches open, and we're actually restoring the template of the tree of life. There's been this artificial overlay, and to be able to connect with somebody that holds, you know, the true template, man, is such a blessing to this world. And I appreciate you so deeply, and I'm so grateful you've joined me. And all the information about her events and website are going to be in the description, of course. And anything that we didn't cover that you would really like to bring some attention to?
The only thing that I can say is that I just want you to see the truth of who you are. I wish we all try to be mirrors for each other, but that's my goal, is to hold a mirror up for you and show you your power. You know, it's incredible. You've got, you know, anything that you see in me, no, you got it. You got it too. We all do. And that, what did you call a second ago? You said the false matrix and
yeah, just these artificial templates, yeah, that are cast upon the earth grids, that when you were, you know, like you were talking when you're working with the trees, you know, you are a conduit to help clear those energies, and it requires us to be able to move on from this lower density by being willing to move away the distortions that nature is reflecting back to us that we've bought into, which is what mind control and social engineering does.
It sounds so simple, but if you can live in a state of love, in a state of true, just like, no matter what it is that comes to you that you're afraid of, give it love. Give it love. That
just like your example is huge, what you just said about handling the coronavirus and the symptoms you had. So yeah, give it love and keep going with that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just know that you can make a difference, because if you go outside, you're getting, you know, go hug a tree, get your feet in the ground, look up to the sun, look up to the sky, anchor your highest codes into the earth, connect with Gaia, you know, connect with her diamond crystal heart. She loves you, you know, and if you're feeling that and you're able to connect with great mystery, right? Great mystery, whatever label you like to use, whatever makes you happy. That's what I say. Whatever labels make you happy. Don't matter. Right. And then the label-less is so refreshing. So some people feel like, oh, I'm not channeling, or I don't feel connected to any star system, or I should be experiencing this to be on a spiritual path. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You are a star system. Right. You know, and just you being your authentic self is connecting with something that does not need definition, and going through this near-death experience and going through what you did, you know, took you into that place of, it all comes back to that oneness. And yeah, labels aren't a problem, because, you know, we identify plants as like a pine tree, okay, this sort of, you know, climate and this and that, but we don't need to strive for a label. We can embrace the fullness and the wholeness. And you're such an incredible reminder of that. I mean, there's no words to express, just like some things you won't be able to really put into words about what you've gone through, but I have no words to just express my gratitude for your path and beautiful soul and heart and what you're giving to the world. And so thank you. Thank you. It's very hard to close this interview, but I will. And everybody check out Beth SoulFire Alchemy. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you.